I spent Thanksgiving 2025 binge watching season 2 of Hazbin Hotel, something that I previously claimed I wouldn't review or watch. Alright, so back when season 2 was first announced earlier this year to be coming out October 29th, I made a very quick announcement video going over my acknowledgement, my awareness that yeah, season 2 of Hazbin Hotel would be coming out later this year, and I didn't know if I would be able to make a video on it this year. I thought that this would be, I thought this was going to be a review that would come out early 2026, because at the time, my video schedule was very strict. I already knew that season 2 had 8 episodes in it, much like season 1, and I knew that it would premiere October 29th, which would be a Wednesday, and so I assumed every episode would come out every Wednesday. It would be one episode a week, meaning the final episode of season 2 I thought would come out December 17th, which would have been way too close to a video that I had originally planned to come out on Christmas Day, but is instead coming out sometime in early 2026. And so I didn't know if I wanted to review season 2 of Hazbin Hotel in 2025. I thought, yeah, you were gonna have to wait a while. You were gonna have to wait until early 2026 for me to review this thing. However, in order to make up for the lack of a Hazbin Hotel season 2 review this year, I came up with the idea to make a video reviewing Helluva Boss season 2, something that I surprisingly didn't cover when I first reviewed this show back in the summer of 2024. As a matter of fact, I don't even think season 2 was finished when I made my first video on Helluva Boss, and so I've heard a lot of things. I heard a lot of things about season 2, and it just made me curious as to how bad it truly was. And so we fast forward to around early to mid-October. I finally start watching season 2 of Helluva Boss. I sit through all 12 episodes, and I just absolutely fucking hate it with all of my heart. Helluva Boss season 2 is genuinely one of the worst pieces of shit I think I've ever had the misfortune of ever sitting through. The first season of Helluva Boss I thought was okay. I thought it was mid. I thought it was mediocre. It wasn't the worst thing ever, but it also had a lot of room for improvement in it. I thought it was better than Hazbin Hotel though. The first season of Hazbin Hotel I thought was trash. I thought it was terrible. And so I looked at Helluva Boss season 1 as being much better than Hazbin Hotel season 1, and then I went to Helluva Boss season 2 and I thought it was significantly worse than season 1 of Helluva Boss, and thinking about it more, I think it might be worse than Hazbin Hotel season 1. I sat through all 12 episodes of Helluva Boss season 2, and I hated it so much that near the end I decided, you know what, no, I'm not going to watch or review Hazbin Hotel Season 2. Not only because I hated Helluva Boss Season 2 that much, but also because I felt like there would be nothing new for me to say. I thought there wouldn't be anything new for me to say about Hazbin Hotel Season 2 that I didn't already previously say about Hazbin Hotel Season 1 or both seasons of Helluva Boss. Eventually, there comes a point in time where criticizing the excessive swearing and sex jokes become just as stale and repetitive as the excessive swearing and sex jokes themselves. It would be like if I made a video today going over why Family Guy sucks nowadays, why modern Family Guy is bad and whatever, and I keep going on about like, oh, they treat Meg badly, they hurt Meg, the Griffins are mean to Meg, Peter is mean to Meg, whatever. A lot of the jokes are just haha, Meg sucks, and it's not funny and mean-spirited and whatever, and it's like, in 2013, this was a fresh, unique, valid criticism towards Family Guy. In 2025, it's old news by now. Everyone already knows this. There is nothing new to say about it. Eventually, there came a point in time where criticizing it became just as stale as the thing itself. It's like, yeah, we get it. Family Guy treats Meg like a punching bag, and it's a bad thing. Can we please come up with an original, unique reason to criticize modern-day Family Guy, please?
Lois trips on her chest and grabs her boob! Lame!
I've gotta say, it felt kind of refreshing not watching or caring about Season 2, willingly letting myself get spoiled as to what happens in Season 2. Of course, though, I didn't let myself get 100% spoiled, because there was a little bit of that curiosity lingering on inside of me as to what Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel is like, especially given the fact that Season 2 ended much sooner than I expected. I thought it would be 1 episode a week starting from October 29th. It would be 8 episodes, and the final episode of Season 2 would come out December 17th, 2025. As it turns out, instead of releasing 1 episode a week, they would release 2 episodes a week every Wednesday, which means that Season 2 actually ended significantly earlier on November 19th. And I'm not gonna lie, this played a part in making me curious as to what Season 2 is like. This played a part in me deciding, you know what, I kind of want to watch and review Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel. I didn't know when I would do it, but eventually I decided, fine, I'm going to watch Hazbin Hotel Season 2. I have heard claims that Season 2 is better than Season 1. Even people that hate the show like I do, they can acknowledge that even if they think Season 2 is bad, there is an improvement from Season 1. And all that did was just make me even more curious about Season 2. And that leads us right back to where we started. I spent Thanksgiving 2025 binge watching Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel, something that I previously claimed I wouldn't watch or review. And yet here we are. Now, before I go over everything that I want to say about Season 2, I'm just going to say there are going to be spoilers in this video. This is going to be a very spoiler-heavy review of Hazbin Hotel Season 2. I may hate the show, but I don't hate it enough to just willingly spoil important things in it without warning. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to admit something. Season 2 is an improvement over Season 1. It's a small improvement, but it is still an improvement nonetheless. There are moments in Season 2 where I could see the great show that this very clearly wants to be, more so than I did in Season 1. There are ideas, concepts in Season 2 that lead me to believe this could be a great show. Part of the reason why I'm so harsh towards these two shows is because of the large amount of potential that they have. I do believe that these two shows have the potential to be great shows, and unfortunately they aren't. There are so many problems within these two shows that prevent them from being the great cartoons that they could have been. And it gets to a point where I fail to understand how anyone could be a fan of either show. Like, I could understand being a fan of Helluva Boss, the idea of Helluva Boss, this fun comedy cartoon about demon hitmen. I could see someone being a fan of that. I can understand being a fan of that, the idea of Helluva Boss. But then to be a fan of Helluva Boss, the final cartoon, the boring soap drama about the romantic relationship between a bird and a demon, no, I don't understand how anyone could possibly like this. This is objectively garbage. I'm sorry. With Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel, I do believe that the show comes a bit closer to being a legitimately good show, if not a great one. But there are still a lot of things that drag it down, unfortunately. However, I will acknowledge that it is an improvement. There is an improvement in quality between Season 1 going into Season 2. Unlike with Season 1 of Hazbin Hotel or Season 2 of Helluva Boss, I wasn't really offended by Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel. I wasn't offended by its badness or anything like that, because I think it's not as bad as the first season of Hazbin Hotel, and it's a masterpiece when compared to Helluva Boss Season 2. Like, this is Avatar The Last Airbender when compared to Helluva Boss Season 2, okay? I cannot stress enough how much I hated Helluva Boss Season 2. And so, I know that this is a different show, but it is from the same creator, and it is from the same universe, and I did watch it shortly after Helluva Boss Season 2, so I feel confident in comparing the two. This is a masterpiece when compared to Helluva Boss Season 2. It's still bad, but it is a much better season than Season 1. It's much better than Season 1, and it's a masterpiece when compared to Helluva Boss Season 2. As a matter of fact, I would probably go as far as to say that this is better than the mostly okay, mediocre first season of Helluva Boss. Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel may very well be the best thing Vivian Medrano has ever created in her career thus far, and it's still a 3 out of 10. But hey, it's a step up from Season 1, which I think is a solid 0 out of 10. Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel focuses on Charlie Morningstar further trying to convince both the angels in heaven and the demons in hell that redemption is possible. A demon can get redeemed and can go to heaven. At the end of Season 1, we see one of the main characters, Sir Pentious, actually get redeemed. We see him go up into heaven, which proves that redemption is possible. A sinner from hell can get redeemed and can enter heaven. It is possible. This is a plot point that's explored frequently throughout Season 2. As a matter of fact, there's an entire episode of the season that focuses entirely on Sir Pentious in heaven, not showing Charlie or Alistair or Angel Dust or any of the other characters down in hell. It is an episode that takes place entirely in heaven. I'll go over that episode in a little bit. Now, in the final episode of Season 1, Adam, the main villain of the show, or at least he was supposed to be, ends up dying. And so as a result of that, naturally, there would have to be other villains as well to take Adam's place. All of the angel characters in heaven are surprised at Sir Pentious redeeming himself and entering heaven, proving that redemption is indeed possible. And so a majority of the angels are in support of the Hazbin Hotel, the idea of redeeming sinners, the idea of ending the extermination, all except for one character, Lute, who I believe was like close to Adam, who believes that the sinners can never be redeemed no matter what, given the fact that one of them, that being the painfully unfunny, quirky, lol random character Nifty, ended up murdering Adam in the final episode of Season 1. And so, to avenge Adam, Lute believes that the angels should not allow for this redemption stuff to happen, and that they should instead continue on with the exterminations. Admittedly, this could be an interesting idea, and so you would think that Lute would be the villain of Season 2. Except she's not. This whole thing of her wanting to avenge Adam, it's kind of explored a tiny bit in Season 2, but generally it's not really explored all that much. She has this thing where she can see Adam, but like it's just a hallucination. It's in her head. And then she has like a whole song about how she will get revenge on the demons in hell in order to avenge Adam. And it's like, you have this song, and then you decide to do nothing with this plot point for the entirety of season 2. This wouldn't necessarily be a problem if it occurred near the end of season 2, if it occurred around episode 7 or episode 8, but no, this happens in the second episode of season 2. They established this in the second episode. They have this whole song dedicated to it. Dare I say, it's kind of an okay song, actually. And then they do literally nothing with this character, nothing with this plot point for the remainder of season 2. Obviously, this is something that will likely be further explored in season 3, but I don't know, I feel like it's kind of redundant to establish this early on into season 2, and then proceed to do nothing with it for the rest of season 2, only to then further actually flesh it out in season 3. Again, if they established all of this near the end of season 2, around episode 7 or so, then it would be fine, but all of this is established in the second episode of season 2, very early on into the season, and I just find that to be bad writing, which I know we've become accustomed to bad writing in both of these shows, but this just feels like why even establish this early on into season 2 if you proceed to do nothing with it for the remainder of the season? It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. To make a long story short, the main villain of season 2 is not Loot, but instead the 3 V's, Vox, Velvet, and everyone's favorite, Valentino. He's the fan favorite, right? He's the character that everyone loves. Am I wrong on that? More specifically though, it's just Vox that's the main villain. The season starts off with all 3 of them being equally villainous, and then as the season progresses forward, it becomes more and more about Vox and less about Valentino and Velvet. And I mean, I'm not saying there isn't villain potential for these characters. I'm not saying these characters can't be good villains or anything like that. I'm not even saying that they're bad villains for this season. I've seen a lot of people say, both people that love and hate this show, both people that like and dislike season 2, I've seen them say Vox is one of the better things about it, and honestly, I can kind of see that. But at the same time, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of a downgrade from having Adam be the big bad villain. I personally found Adam to be a really unfunny character in season 1, so I'm not particularly complaining about his absence in season 2, but even with how unfunny he was, he did give off that big bad villain feel. Like this is the main antagonist of Hazbin Hotel the entire show, and he ends up dying at the end of season 1, and so I can't help but feel that all of the subsequent villains that this show will have just kind of pale in comparison. None of them are gonna have that big bad villain feel that Adam had, if you get what I'm saying. I've seen a lot of people criticize the pacing for Hazbin Hotel, specifically for its first season, and I wish I paid more attention to its pacing when I initially reviewed it back in 2024. Because looking back on it, thinking about it more in retrospect, especially after watching season 2, I do think that yeah, the pacing is a bit too fast. The show starts off establishing that the angels in heaven perform these exterminations to the demons in hell, and so Charlie tries to convince the angels that redemption is possible. They don't have to perform these exterminations anymore, and it makes you think this will be the main central conflict for the entire show. We see Adam, they establish that Adam is the big villain of the show, and so the show focuses on Charlie trying to convince the angels that redemption is possible before the exterminations happen. And then in the hypothetical series serious finale for the show, Charlie succeeds in convincing the angels that redemption is possible. And as for Adam, he either becomes convinced that redemption is possible or he gets defeated, thereby providing audiences with what I want to imagine would be a pretty satisfying serious finale. And instead, the whole thing with taking down Adam and convincing the angels that redemption is possible and stopping the exterminations, all of that is resolved at the end of the first season. This show is going to have 4 seasons. The main conflict of the show was cleared up in the first season, and so the stakes don't feel as high as they did in the first season. It doesn't feel the same. Something is missing. Throughout season 2, all of the angels in heaven except for Lilith are shown to be supportive of the redemption idea, the idea of the Hazbin Hotel. And it's like, it feels like this is something that should have been explored in the final season of the show. Whatever, like, the hypothetical final season of Hazbin Hotel. This doesn't feel like something that would be explored in only the second season of the show. The main conflict of the show, what is supposed to be the main conflict of the show, and it ends up getting resolved at the end of the first season. And so the stakes don't really feel as high as they should be for season 2, or presumably for all of the subsequent seasons in general. The whole thing with the 3 Vs, well, more specifically Vox, is he wants more power. That's all that it is. He believes this whole thing of sinners getting redeemed is a whole lot of bullcrap. It's not possible for a sinner to be redeemed and enter heaven. Charlie tries numerous times to convince him that redemption is possible. She tries to prove to him that Serpentius is in heaven. However, she's unable to. And this is where I have to bring up a plot hole that I swear they don't tackle. I swear they don't give any sort of explanation for this. I might be missing out on this, okay? Maybe I'm in the wrong for this, but this is way too big of a plot hole for them to just ignore and not acknowledge. But at the same time, I don't remember ever hearing any explanation for this. Throughout season 2, the angels in heaven are shown with the ability to teleport into hell via a portal. And for some reason, I swear they don't give any explanation for this. They don't just have Serpentius come with them through this portal. I swear they don't give any explanation as to why he can't come through the portals with these angels. Why he can't just appear in person to convince Vox, to convince all of the demons in hell that redemption is possible. They could come up with any excuse that's like, oh, it's only like the high power, high tier angels that are able to teleport into hell. A former sinner who was able to redeem themselves can never go back to hell, that sort of thing. They could give out an explanation like that, and instead they don't. I swear to y'all, they don't. I know that I clown on these 2 shows for their really bad writing, but this is such a massive plot hole. This is like shoot them with the dehydration gun levels of bad writing that there's no way, man. Against my will, I spent 27 minutes of my night rewatching the second episode of season 2, Storyteller, the episode that focuses on Serpentius in heaven, the episode that I presumed would explain why he can't go through these portals with the other angels. I thought maybe at some point they actually give a proper explanation, but I just wasn't paying attention to it. And then you can only imagine my shock. You can only imagine my surprise when it turns out, no, they don't explain why he can't just go through these portals with the other angels. There's a scene in the episode where one of the angel main characters, one of the heaven main characters, Emily, is showing Serpentius around heaven. And Serpentius asks if he could see his friends to make sure that they're okay. And then Emily's like, no, you can't, unfortunately. And when I got to this scene, I thought, okay, maybe they actually do explain why he can't go through these portals. portals. I wasn't paying attention to it the first time. And then Emily is like, no, you can't go see your friends back in hell. This doesn't happen. This sort of thing doesn't happen. Her words, not mine. She goes on about how Serpentius is special and unique and the first of his kind, the first sinner to be redeemed and enter heaven. And it's like, yeah, that's very cool stuff. Very nice. What the does that have to do with him not being able to go back to hell briefly? I kid you not, this is the closest thing they have to an explanation as to why he can't just go through these portals with the other angels. This doesn't happen. That's Emily's reason. That's the excuse. At no point do they ever properly explain why Serpentius can't go through these portals. He just can't. There's a scene in one episode where the Heaven main characters go down into hell briefly and they open up a portal and all of them go down into the portal except for Serpentius. And it's like, bro, why can't you just go with them? Why can't the show explain, give a good reason as to why he can't go with them? As previously mentioned, Serpentius goes on about his concern for his friends. He misses his friends, he wants to see them again, he wants to make sure that they're okay. And this is your opportunity to briefly see them, to briefly visit Charlie and Angel Dust and whatever to make sure that they're okay. And then he just doesn't go into the portal for some reason. The show never explains once why he can't just go into the portal with the other angels. And now that I think about it, even if there was an actual proper reason why he can't go through these portals, even if it's like, oh, it's only the high tier, high ranked angels that are able to go down into hell, even if that's the case, I want to imagine these characters, the angel characters, would make an exception for Serpentius. They clearly understand the severity of Serpentius being in heaven. They clearly understand that Serpentius is very different from all of the other residents of heaven. And so why can't they just make an exception for him? They understand that he stands out from the other angels in heaven, and yet they can't just make an exception, allow him to briefly go back down into hell to see the other demons, to see Charlie and whatever, to convince Vox that redemption is possible, to prevent the main conflict of season 2 from happening. I'm genuinely at a loss for words for this. This is a professionally made cartoon with a fairly big team behind it. This is a show that has millions and millions of fans. This is a show that is on a major streaming service, and it has a plot hole this bad. I know that not every story is perfect. Even the greatest stories can have imperfections in them. I'm sure people could very easily find plot holes in shows like The Sopranos or Breaking Bad or whatever, but then it's like, this is such a massive plot hole that is never explained at all, and it just leaves me confused to no end. The only reason, the closest thing the show has to a reason as to why Serpentius can't go through these portals is because he's different from the other angels. He's the first of his kind. This doesn't happen, as Emily puts it. And then it's like, that's it? You're not going to further elaborate on that? You're not going to try and correlate that with why he can't go through these portals? Why he can't just briefly visit hell if Emily and all the other characters are able to do it with no problem? What the is up with that? That is awful writing. I'm sorry. Holy crap. I genuinely cannot wrap my head around this. In the first season, Charlie and Maggy are able to go up into heaven. In the second season, it's shown numerous times the angels in heaven are able to go down into hell. They are able to visit hell. So how come this one character that is very clearly important, very clearly a big deal, why is he not allowed to go back down? Why is he not allowed to briefly visit hell? I'm not joking. I rewatched the second episode of this season because I thought maybe I missed out on the explanation. This was something that I thought about while I was watching season 2 for the first time. Why can't they just have Serpentius go through these portals? And then I rewatch episode 2 and you can only imagine my shock when I find out no, they don't explain it whatsoever. They don't explain why he can't go through these portals. He just can't, and that's it. This is your GOAT right here. This is what y'all consider peak. There are tons of people that I want to imagine would consider this their favorite cartoon, if not their favorite show, period. And I just cannot understand that for the life of me. When I go on about the bad writing in both of these shows, I'm not just talking about the excessive swearing and sex jokes. I'm talking about stuff like this. Genuinely really bad, massive plot holes that are never explained. Unbelievable, man. Absolutely unbelievable. Anyways, the 3Vs control most of the media in Hell. Their company, whatever, controls a lot of the media in Hell, and so they are able to successfully convince the citizens of Hell that the Hazbin Hotel is a fake, Charlie is a fraud, whatever, that sort of thing. And so a lot of the guests at the Hazbin Hotel end up leaving it, believing that redemption is a scam, redemption is not possible. And not only that, but Vox manages to convince the demons in Hell to wage war against the angels in heaven as a form of revenge for the exterminations. The main leader of the angels, I don't remember her name. Can I call her God? I know this is obviously not God, but like it's the closest thing to God that's been featured on this show so far without it being God himself. She realizes the mistake that she had made with the exterminations, and so she and the other angels try to apologize for the exterminations. Unfortunately, Vox and a lot of the people in Hell refuse to accept their apology, which, I'm sorry, but that kind of makes sense to an extent. The angels exterminated a lot of demons in Hell, and I mean a lot of them. Charlie successfully convinces them that redemption is possible, and so there's no reason to continue on with the exterminations. And okay, yeah, maybe there are demons that would forgive the angels for the exterminations and go to the Hazbin Hotel to get redeemed, but I want to imagine there would also be demons that wouldn't forgive the angels because of the exterminations, which is, you know, I've got to admit that's kind of valid. Does that not make sense? Maybe they wouldn't take it so far as to wage war against heaven, but I want to imagine there would be demons in Hell that would have a grudge against the angels because of the exterminations. And so I end up looking at this specific part of Vox's evil plan and I think, no, that kind of makes sense actually. He's got a good point there, kind of. Obviously, every other aspect of his evil plan is unacceptable, but this one instance of like, why should we forgive the angels for what they did to us? It's like, you know, that's kind of fair, that's kind of reasonable actually, that's kind of valid. In order to start this war on heaven, Vox gets this massive cannon that he intends to shoot to heaven. In addition to wanting to start a war against heaven, Vox also wants to take control of heaven in addition to hell. And so in order to do that, he gets this cannon that'll allow him to shoot up into heaven. And so it's up to Charlie and the others to stop Vox and his evil plan. Oh yeah, there's also this whole thing where like Alistair gives himself up and becomes a prisoner for Vox. I don't know. I know they established this all the way back in the first season that like, oh, there's this rivalry between Vox and Alistair, but it feels like yet another thing to add to the storyline. I feel like season 2 suffers the same problem that both season 1 of Hazbin Hotel and season 2 of Helluva Boss suffered from. The plot is too cluttered. There are too many things that are happening all at once, and there's not enough time to take it all in. I really hope that for season 3, they get rid of the whole 8 episode per season format, because I feel like that's preventing them from further exploring, further fleshing out these ideas. I've previously criticized this show for having way too many characters to focus on, and season 2 decides to make this worse as there are now several more characters to focus on. There's much more of a focus on Heaven in season 2 when compared to in season 1. And so a lot of the Heaven characters that were present in season 1 but didn't really have a big role in season 1, yeah, now they have a bigger role in season 2. In addition to Serpentius being added into the mix. And then we have a new character, Abel, voiced by Patrick Stump, the lead singer of Fall Out Boy. I don't listen to Fall Out Boy, but still, my condolences to any Fall Out Boy fan that's watching this video. And this character does literally nothing for season 2. Quite literally nothing at all. You could remove this character from season 2 and absolutely nothing would change. His whole thing is that he's supposed to be Adam's son. And much like with Lute, this is something that is established early on into the season, in the 2nd episode, and so it makes you think this is gonna be a big thing in season 2. And then, no, that's not the case at all. This is very rarely explored. This whole thing of like, he has to fill in his father's shoes, whatever. It's almost never explored in season 2, and presumably it will be explored in season 3. But then that just makes me question, why establish this early on into season 2? Again, if this was near the end of season 2, then it would be fine. But they established this in the 2nd episode of the season out of 8 episodes. And so besides that, this character serves no purpose at all to the storyline of season 2. He's just a character that exists and that's it. The only other big new character in season 2 is Baxter, who ends up joining the hotel. And his whole thing is that he's a nerd. He's into like science and experiments and whatever, that sort of thing. Not exactly the most original character you could think of, but I mean, like, I wasn't expecting original, unique characters in Hazbin Hotel, a show where a large majority of the characters look very similar to each other and have very similar personalities. Wow, guys, I can't believe it. This image shows the exact same character 3 different times. Isn't that crazy? I remember reading something that Alistair was the very first character ever created for the Helluverse, which honestly, yeah, that makes sense, to be honest. And apparently, she first created Alistair all the way back in 2008, over a decade before the original Hazbin Hotel pilot came out, and over 15 years before it became a proper cartoon. And so, it's not really surprising to me the fact that there are several characters in the show that just kind of remind me of Alistair. I look at Vox and Lucifer and it's like they feel too derivative of Alistair. Whether it be with the way that they act, their personality, or their design, they just feel derivative of Alistair. Like there's not really a whole lot to make them separate, unique characters from Alistair. And while we're on that topic, I'm gonna give Baxter a tiny bit of credit. I think this is a perfectly fine character design. His color palette is good. There aren't too many colors, but there's also not a limited color palette either. And thankfully, there's no in red to be found on this character design, which is a great thing because the last thing that we need is another character that has a primarily red color scheme. And his design is not overly cluttered with unnecessary details. For Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss standards, this is a really good character design. Thank you for that, Baxter. Thank you. Unfortunately though, for most of season 2, please note that I said most of, Baxter isn't really all that important. I guess back when Serpentius was in hell, they used to work together, and then they stopped working together. I don't know. It's not really a super important thing as far as I'm concerned. And it's not until the final episode of season 2 where he gains some importance to the storyline, where he uses his super cool hacking skills to transmit a broadcast of Serpentius in heaven down to the citizens of hell, thereby proving that he is in heaven and redemption is possible. Besides that, yeah, this character serves no purpose at all. You know, to be honest, I feel like I might be a bit too harsh towards Baxter. I think Baxter might be one of the better characters in this show. Not only does he have one of the best character designs on this show, but he's also one of the very, very, very few characters on this show to not swear non-stop. Now that I think about it, Baxter might actually be the GOAT. And now it's time for me to go over the swearing and sex jokes. Well, actually, no, it's mostly just swearing. There are surprisingly very few cheap sex jokes that are found in Season 2. They are still there undeniably, and not once are they ever funny, but there aren't that many in this season compared to in Season 1 or both seasons of Helluva Boss, so thank God for that, man. Unfortunately, the excessive swearing is still there and it's still unfunny, so I'm gonna briefly talk about it. Shortly before I started watching Season 2, I decided to play a little game. I decided to do a little something for fun. I manually wrote down every single swear word, every instance of a swear word being said in all 8 episodes of Season 2. Every time they say the F word, every time they say the B word, every time they say the SH word, that sort of thing. Why? I don't know. I felt like I wanted to prove a point that has already been proven God knows how many times. Maybe it was just for fun. Maybe it's because I thought this was the only thing that would make Season 2 tolerable. I don't know. I just did it. I manually wrote down every single time there is a swear word said on the show on Season 2. Now, please note, when I wrote all of this down, I decided to include tame swear words as well. I decided, you know what, stuff like damn and crap, they count. I don't care. Admittedly, something that I forgot to take into consideration was every single time they said hell. But then I would have to distinguish every time the characters say hell to refer to where they live, the location that they live in, versus every time they say hell as a swear word. Every time they say, what the hell? What the hell is this? What the hell is going on? I didn't even register hell as technically being a swear word until I was like halfway into Season 2. And then as soon as I realized that, I was like, nah, I don't feel like going back and including every instance that the characters say hell. I'm sorry. And as you can see from the results, yeah, this show has a potty mouth still. The excessive swearing is back in Season 2, and it's still not funny. There are in total 306 swear words that are said across Season 2, with over 170 of those swear words being the F word alone. The final episode of Season 2, Curtain Call, is significantly longer than the other episodes of Season 2, and the other episodes of the show in general, including Season 1, being almost 40 minutes long, being 37 minutes long. And they say the F word over 50 times in the episode, which is just absolutely insane to me. I've got to be honest, I'm gonna go into detail about this later on, but there are moments in the final episode that I found to be surprisingly kind of good, actually. There are action scenes in the final episode that I kind of enjoyed. I thought they were actually pretty decent. I was actually kind of invested in what was going on, believe it or not. I never in my life thought I would ever say this stuff about Hazbin Hotel, but here we are. There are fight scenes in the final episode that I think they're pretty cool scenes. I think they're actually pretty good. But the thing that drags them down, the thing that ruins them, is the unnecessary swearing. The pointlessly shoehorned in F-bombs completely ruin these cool action scenes. Again, it comes off like a very cheap, lazy way to convey that this isn't some baby cartoon. This isn't some kid-friendly Disney cartoon. This isn't Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network. No, this is a cartoon for big boys. This is a cartoon for big, strong, manly men. No babies allowed. And it's like the action scenes alone are enough to convey that this is for adults and not for kids. The unnecessary swearing completely ruin what are otherwise surprisingly really good action scenes, especially for Hazbin Hotel standards. While I was watching season 2, I just kept looking at all of the excessive swearing every time a character says the F word or the B word or whatever. It just made me think of something. And I'm addressing this to anyone that likes Hazbin Hotel or Helluva Boss. I am asking this to anyone that is a fan of the Helluverse. A genuine, honest, sincere question. At what point does this stop being funny for y'all? At what point will you look at this and realize, no, this isn't really funny anymore? Hazbin Hotel is expected to get at least 4 seasons, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets greenlit for more seasons after that. At what point will the swearing stop being funny? Because it's like, me personally, I don't think it's funny at all. It wasn't funny in the 2019 pilot, it wasn't funny in season 1, and it wasn't funny in season 2, and I guarantee you it won't be funny in season 3 or season 4. I'm willing to forgive the unfunny humor for the 2019 pilot because it is an amateur indie short that's uploaded onto YouTube. It's free to watch on YouTube. And then meanwhile, the final cartoon is much higher quality. It has a bigger, more professional team behind it. It is significantly more professionally made. It's on a major streaming service that you have to pay for. You can't just watch this for free like the 2019 pilot, unless you go the epic-based route that I always take, yar har fiddle dee dee, if you know what I mean. The final show premiered almost 5 years, almost half a decade after the 2019 pilot came out, and somehow, despite all of that, it has the same style of humor. The style of humor is exactly the same as it was in the pilot. It might have been excusable for the 2019 pilot, but it sure as hell is not excusable for the final show. Now again, I personally never found it to be funny at all from the very beginning, but let's say hypothetically, I found the excessive swearing funny in both the 2019 pilot and season 1. Imagine when this show ends after like, I don't know, 5 to 6 seasons, who knows how long this thing will last for. If I keep watching the show more and more, if I try and binge watch this show, eventually, very quickly, the excessive swearing will stop being funny. The whole thing of, haha, the characters say the F word a million times, maybe that might be funny in season 1, but by season 7, it'll be really fucking old and repetitive, and you'll just be begging for Vivian Medrano to come up with actual jokes for her cartoons, instead of just having it be like, the characters say the B word, that's it, that's the joke. I'm being serious with all of this. If there's anyone watching this that loves Hazbin Hotel or Helluva Boss, I need to know, at what point will the excessive swearing stop being funny to y'all? At what point will you look at all of the F-bombs being dropped in Hazbin Hotel and think, yeah, it's getting really old actually. This stopped being funny a long time ago. It was funny in season 1, but now we're in season 5, it's no longer funny. It's getting really old and stale. And that's one of the many reasons why I believe neither of these shows will have any kind of lasting impact. Neither of these shows will have any kind of legacy. You know how people people say like, oh, Avatar is the highest grossing movie of all time, but it's left behind no cultural impact. Yeah, I could see both of these shows going through the same thing. They're massively popular shows right now, but I guarantee you, in 3 to 4 years, people will look back on these shows and find them to be unfunny and badly aged. These shows will go from being very polarizing, divisive, love it or hate it cartoons to being unanimously agreed to be garbage. Again, if there's anyone watching this that's a fan of Hazbin Hotel, think about it. Do you see yourselves still loving this show 10 years from now? Do you see yourselves still finding this show funny or entertaining 10 years from now? Because I cannot imagine that at all. This thing is going to age badly. It already has aged badly for a lot of people. To the people that hate these two shows, they are dead on arrival. And so now it's only a matter of time before the fans of these two shows realize, actually no, these shows are not funny whatsoever. All I'm gonna say is the excessive swearing and sex jokes might be funny for y'all for the first season and maybe for the second season, but by the time we get to like, I don't know, season 8, they're gonna stop being funny. They're gonna become very stale, very repetitive, and very annoying. I guarantee it. It is inevitable. Oh yeah, speaking of the excessive sex jokes, I will give season 2 this. There aren't that many pointless, haha, it's funny because the characters are horny for each other jokes, like in season 1, or in both seasons of Helluva Boss. The haha horny, haha pee jokes that these shows have, they're surprisingly kept at a minimum for season 2, which I will give credit for. It's still there in season 2, and it's still not funny whatsoever, but at least it's not there that much. At least it's like they keep it at a minimum. And so even though it's still unfunny, I feel like it comes closer. The sex jokes, the horny pee jokes, whatever, they come a little bit closer to being actually funny when they're kept at a minimum, when they only do it on rare occasions. And there is something that I want to go over regarding one specific episode of season 2, that being the second episode, Storyteller, an episode that I personally believe to be maybe the best episode of Hazbin Hotel by far, not just for season 2, but also for the show in general. This is an episode that focuses entirely on Serpentius and heaven. We never once see hell at all in the episode. We never see Charlie or the 3 Vs or Alistair, Angel Dust. We see none of them in this episode. We see Loot, we see Emily, we see Abel, we see this character who I don't remember her name, the character who is not God, obviously, but is also the closest thing the show has to God so far. So I'm just gonna refer to her as God to make things easier, even though she's clearly not God. And then, of course, we have Serpentius, who tries to adjust to life in heaven. It's in this episode where we get something that I had previously criticized this show for. Something that I wish they did in season 1, and I don't know why they didn't do it. They go over the backstory for some of these characters. They go over what some of these characters were like before they died and went to hell. They go over why these characters died. In this episode, they do this for Serpentius. They go over his backstory, and then in 2 later episodes, or maybe they're in the same episode, I don't remember, they go over Alistair's backstory, and then they go over Vox's backstory. Thank you for that. Thank you. When I reviewed Helluva Boss Season 2, I acknowledged this as being something that they should have done for Season 1. They should have went over the backstory for these characters in Season 1. Not all of the characters. They could have gone through like only some of the characters and that's it. But instead, they don't go over the characters' backstories at all for season 1. I mainly brought this up in regards to Angel Dust, who is a very explicitly LGBT character, and he's in hell, he's not in heaven, and the show never once gives any backstory as to why he's in hell and not heaven, which could lead to some very unfortunate implications that are made even more unfortunate by the fact that there are no LGBT characters in heaven. None of the main characters from heaven, none of the heaven main characters are LGBT. Maybe Sir Pentious is LGBT, I don't know. I don't think there's a single straight character on this show. Not that it matters, the show would still be garbage if every character was straight, don't get the wrong idea. But it's like, surely it can't be that hard to create an original transgender angel or anything like that. It can't be that hard to do it. If you can create a transgender demon, then you should have no problem creating a transgender angel. I'm just saying. But yes, indeed, they go over the backstories for some of these characters, explaining how they ended up in hell. They don't go over the backstory for Angel Dust in season 2, unfortunately. Well, they kind of do, but not really. You'll see what I mean later on. Instead, the only characters whose backstories are explored in season 2 are Sir Pentious, Alistair, and Vox. And I've gotta be honest, their backstories aren't terrible necessarily. I think the show does a fairly good job, a fairly okay job at exploring their backstories. The whole thing with Sir Pentious is that he was an inventor back in I think it was the 1800s or something like that, I don't know. And the sin that he committed, the reason why he ended up in hell and not heaven, is because he saw this woman get murdered by Jack the Ripper and he didn't help out at all. He wanted to save this woman, but he didn't want to risk dying in the process. And so throughout the rest of his life, he felt this guilt and regret over not being able to save the victims of Jack the Ripper. And then Alistair's whole thing is that he was from much later on in the 1920s, 1930s, whatever, and he was this radio host or something like that, I don't know, which, that explains the kind of radio aesthetic that he has. That explains the filter on his voice. And so he makes a deal with this demon, he sells his soul, I'm not sure, to become strong and powerful whenever he goes to the afterlife, whenever he dies and goes to hell. I have no clue. And then Vox's whole thing is he used to be a TV reporter. He used to be a news reporter, whatever. And more than anything else, he wanted the attention. He wanted people to focus on him to the point where he would murder other news reporters and talk show hosts and whatever, just so that all of the spotlight could be on him. And again, the show does a fairly okay job at exploring these characters' backstories. However, there is one thing that I do have to question. Alistair's backstory reveals that he was a radio host when he was alive back in the 1920s or 30s or whatever, which explains the kind of old-timey feel that he has as a character. It explains the radio filter that his voice has. It explains the microphone stand cane that he has. It explains all of that. Vox's backstory reveals that he craved attention from people watching TV. He was a news reporter, a talk show host, that sort of thing, which explains why when he died and went to hell, he has a TV head. In addition to that, his cause of death was a TV fell on his head, which further explains why he has a TV head in hell. It also explains why in hell he, alongside Velvet and Valentino, run this massive media corporation that's also named after him, Vox Tech. So I have to ask, how come Sir Pentious is a snake in hell and I guess heaven as well, even though there is nothing in his backstory relating to snakes whatsoever. His whole thing was like, when he was alive, he was an inventor, and that's it. Has nothing to do with snakes at all. And so you would think like, oh, he died from something relating to snakes. He died from like a snake bite or something. Venom poisoning, whatever. No, that's not the case at all. I don't remember how he died, but it had nothing to do with snakes at all. I think they give an explanation as to why he has this snake appearance when he died. It's supposed to be like a pun on his name, Serpentious, as in serpent. I don't know. It's kind of fucking stupid if you ask me. You know, it's not really consistent. Alistair's backstory explains the old-timey radio appearance, and Vox's backstory explains the TV head appearance. So how come Serpentious's backstory doesn't explain the snake appearance? It doesn't really make much sense. It's not consistent. This is far from the biggest problem that I have with Hazbin Hotel's writing, but it is still something that I thought was worth bringing up anyways. But getting back on topic, episode 2 takes place entirely in heaven, and so as a result of that, there is very little swearing to be found in this episode, which, I've gotta be honest, I don't like the excessive swearing. This is not me defending it in any way. The excessive swearing will never not be unfunny. The excessive swearing will always be a cheap, lazy way to convey that the show is for adults and not for kids. But I will acknowledge it is a little bit clever. The idea that, like, in hell, the demons swear a lot. In heaven, the angels almost never swear at all. I think that is an idea that can work. The problem is, though, we don't really see heaven in this show all that much when compared to hell. And so this juxtaposition isn't really felt as much as it should be. If I binge watched all of Hazbin Hotel and I got to this specific episode, I wouldn't look at the lack of swearing as being a funny contrast, but instead a breath of fresh air, a fluke if you will, before we go back to hell in the next episode, literally, and we have to deal with the incredibly unfunny excessive swearing, made even worse by the fact that the F word in the third episode is said a whopping 31 times, which is absolutely ridiculous. I'm sorry. The whole thing of like, oh, they don't swear in heaven because that's impolite and rude and whatever, it would be out of character, that sort of thing. It also made me realize why Adam as a character doesn't really work, besides the obvious fact that he's unfunny. Adam is supposed to be like, you know, one of the big leaders of heaven and whatever for the first season, and yet in terms of personality, in terms of like the way that he acts, he is no different from the demons. He is the only heaven main character in the show to act the same way as the demons, to excessively swear and whatever, make constant sex jokes, say the F word and the B word non-stop, that sort of thing. And it's like, it doesn't make sense at all, because this is Adam, as in Adam and Eve. This is the Adam. Maybe this was done deliberately as a joke. Maybe this was done to convey that, like, oh, Adam thinks he's better than the demons in hell, but in actuality, he's no better or different from them. Maybe that's what they were going for, I'm not sure, but if that's the case, I feel like there is a much better way to convey that Adam is no better or different from the demons in hell that he hates. There's a much better way to convey that, I'm sure. None of the other heaven main characters swear or make sex jokes a million times like Adam did in season 1, so I'm just really confused as to what's up with that. Not even Abel, who was supposed to be Adam's son, is like that. I think there's like one instance across all of his appearances where he swears, and that's it. Compared to the other episodes, there aren't that many swear words in episode 2. A large majority of the swearing in this episode comes from Loot, and I guess to a lesser extent, this like hallucination of Adam that she has near the end of the episode. And in the context of what's going on, it makes sense for her to be swearing. The episode starts off with the angels holding a trial against Sir Pentious, wondering how it's possible for him to end up in heaven, what he was like when he was alive, and how he ended up in hell in the first place. It's there where the angels agree that redemption is indeed possible and that they should stop doing the exterminations, and so they welcome Sir Pentious into heaven. They welcome him in as being a worthy addition to heaven, and everyone's happy about it except for Lute, who is angry at the fact that the demons murdered Adam, and she insists that the exterminations continue and that Sir Pentious should go back to hell in order to avenge Adam. She's the only one that's against Sir Pentious joining heaven. She's the only one that's against the idea of redemption. She's the only one here that is angry and frustrated, and so it actually makes sense for her to be swearing. It makes sense for her to lose her cool and to start swearing, even though the angels in heaven very rarely swear, even though the other angels in heaven very rarely if ever swear. It makes sense. It's still not very funny, but at least it makes sense. And to be honest, it doesn't even feel like it's trying to be funny on certain occasions, which honestly makes it further work a little bit more. The fact that some of these swear words aren't being said for comedic purposes. There's not that much swearing in this episode because it takes place entirely in heaven and not hell. A majority of the swearing in this episode comes from one character, and in the context of the episode, it makes sense for her to be swearing. Sir Pentious' backstory is admittedly kind of interesting, and Lute's song near the end of the episode is actually kind of decent. Yeah, it's safe for me to say this is the best episode of Hazbin Hotel thus far, and it's still not a particularly great episode. But, you know, it is amazing when compared to the other episodes. There are redeeming qualities in this episode that help make it better than the other episodes. This is the Ozymandias of Hazbin Hotel. That being said, though, even if there isn't that much swearing in the episode, and even if this is the best episode of the show, it's still not a very funny episode. There's no excessive swearing in this episode, but I still didn't find it to be all that funny. I think the biggest problem with season 2 is that it is boring. Very, very boring. The offensively bad quality of season 1 isn't really there in season 2. I feel like maybe it's because I've gotten used to it. Maybe I've become desensitized by it. When I first watched season 1 of Hazbin Hotel back in 2024, and I saw how painfully unfunny it was, I was like, holy crap, this is the worst thing I have ever seen. How can anyone possibly like this show? And then over 1 year later, I'm watching season 2, and it's like, you know, it's still unfunny, but I feel like now I've just kind of gotten used to it. I'm just kind of bored more than anything else watching it. There are interesting ideas and concepts, but ultimately, I find it to be boring. As I've mentioned before, there are ideas and concepts and whatever that are introduced in season 2, and then they're just not really utilized all that much in season 2. The whole thing of Lute wanting to avenge Adam and get revenge on the demons and whatever. The whole thing of Abel being Adam's son and, you know, filling in his shoes. The third episode of the season focuses on the 3 Vs. Well, okay, 2 of the Vs, Velvet and Vox, visiting the Hazbin Hotel in order for Charlie to prove that redemption is indeed possible. Angel, and so she tries her absolute hardest to redeem Angel Dust, using him as an example, and none of her attempts to redeem Angel end up working. And then there's like this scene where Vox is interrogating Angel, claiming that like he can never be redeemed no matter what, and he briefly brings up that like he murdered his father or something like that, and it's like, you think that's gonna be an important, relevant thing for season 2. You would think that would be explored later on in this season, and then it is promptly never acknowledged again for the rest of the season. This is genuinely some of the worst foreshadowing I think I've ever seen in anything ever. I don't even know if you can classify this as foreshadowing, to be honest, because it is that bad. And yet, despite everything, despite how badly written season 2 is, despite the many problems with its writing, despite the very bloated, cluttered nature of season 2 that I've more or less become accustomed to with the Helluverse, I've just accepted the Helluverse is bloated and cluttered, and there's nothing I can do about it. There are way too many things that the Helluverse wants to tell me, and it doesn't give me enough time to digest all of it. Despite how frequently season 2 establishes certain things early on into it that are promptly ignored and never further explored for the rest of the season, and will very likely actually be further explored in season 3, in which case, why bother establishing this stuff early on into season 2? Despite the fact that the show never once explains this very huge, very noticeable plot hole of why Serpentius can't go through these angel portals with the other angels into hell. Despite everything that I've gone over with season 2, I don't hate it as much as the first season of Hazbin Hotel, or especially the second season of Helluva Boss. Again, I think there is still a noticeable improvement in terms of the quality. Believe it or not, there are rare moments where I was actually kind of invested in what was going on. I was actually kind of invested in the story that season 2 was trying to tell. I watched season 2 of Helluva Boss, and it's like everything that happens in it, I'm like, I don't care about it. Why should I care about this stuff, honestly? But then with this, I'm able to care a little bit, a tiny bit. I'm able to care. I'm able to take some of the serious moments a little bit seriously. Thinking about it more, I think it would be better if Hazbin Hotel was primarily a drama with little to no comedy, while Helluva Boss was a comedy with little to no drama. I think the problem is, like, both of these shows try to be comedy dramas, and they fail miserably at it. I think Hazbin Hotel would work better if it was a lot more serious and drama-oriented, and then Helluva Boss is the comedic, raunchy spin-off, instead of having both shows try and fail to be comedy dramas. Of course, that would require Vivian Medrano to acknowledge the original premise that she established for Helluva Boss for her own show, and for whatever reason, this great premise, she's just like, nah, I'm ignoring it. Boring as hell bird-demon relationship. That's what should be prioritized instead. I guess I've just become numb to it all. Maybe I've gotten used to the badness of this show. When I first watched Hazbin Hotel back in early 2024, I was like, holy crap, this is so painfully unfunny. How could anyone possibly find this funny? And then here I am, over 1 year later, I'm watching this and it's like, the excessive swearing is still painfully unfunny, but I've also just like, I've kind of gotten used to it. I've become desensitized to it. As I've mentioned before, the second episode of season 2 is probably the best episode of the entire show, in part because there's not as much swearing in it. It's not just pointless F words and sex jokes and whatever being shoehorned in. That being said though, I still didn't find it to be a very funny episode. I found it to be kind of boring. It's the best episode. There are moments where I actually thought it was decent, but generally I was pretty bored watching it. There's just something missing from this show when it comes to its comedy. I guess it was the knowledge that like, okay, there's not as much swearing in this episode because this episode takes place entirely in heaven, and then the remaining 6 episodes we're gonna go back into hell, and so we're gonna go back to the excessive swearing and sex jokes, and so it's like, I wasn't able to enjoy the brief moment where there wasn't excessive swearing and sex jokes in the show because I knew that like it was temporary. It was for this one episode and that's it. Only this one episode. As soon as I started watching episode 3, I would immediately go back to being bombarded with F-bombs and sex jokes non-stop. And not once would it ever be funny. Okay, I have to admit something. There is one funny moment in season 2. There is one moment where I just died of laughter. This is the first and most likely only time I have ever laughed or ever will laugh watching Hazbin Hotel. And the craziest thing is, it's not even intended to be a joke. It's not even intended to be a funny scene or anything like that. If anything, it's funny because of how unfortunate it is. Just hear me out on this, please. Hear me out. Let me explain. Now, as I mentioned before, in the 3rd episode of Season 2, Vox and Velvet both visit the Hazbin Hotel. Charlie tries to convince them that redemption is possible, and she claims that, like, Angel Dust is close to being redeemed, and so she tries her absolute hardest to get Angel Dust redeemed, and then it doesn't work out at all. And then Vox goes on about how Angel Dust will never be redeemed no matter what. Angel Dust murdered his father when he was alive before he went to hell. I don't know. Again, this is something that's just randomly brought up one time and then never further explored for the rest of the season. This is obviously something that will be further explored in season 3, but it just makes me question why the even established this in season 2, early on into season 2 at that. That's not how foreshadowing works, Vivian. I'm sorry. And I think like Valentino gets brought up and we know the whole thing with like Angel Dust and Valentino. That's not the funny part, I swear to y'all. And then Angel Dust runs off crying, and then Charlie tries to confront the two Vs, and then Velvet says something along the lines of, well, maybe if Angel Dust didn't get his panties in a twist. Except she doesn't say panties, she doesn't say underwear, she doesn't say anything like that. She says a completely different word. Now, there is another word for panties. I'm so sorry for using Google AI, but it's the only thing that I have. I'm so sorry for using it, but there's another word for panties. There's another word for underwear, and for very obvious reasons, I'm not going to say this word myself. I'm not going to take that risk, okay? And for whatever reason, they decide, yeah, let's just have Velvet say this word instead of having her say get his panties in a twist, you know, something that everyone says, normal people say. Let's be fancy and bold and have her say this word instead, not knowing, not realizing, completely ignoring the fact that it sounds like a certain other much more unfortunate word. Bro, it is a miracle, the fact that I knew this word was another word used to describe panties and underwear and whatever. It is a miracle that I knew that beforehand, because if I watched this episode, if I got to this scene and I had no idea that the word she just said was another word for panties and underwear, holy crap, that would have made things even more insane for me. I'm just so confused. It's like, why go with this word? Why go with this word? How did, like, the people that, like, recorded this, the voice actress saying this, it's like, did none of them realize that this sounds like a certain other word? Did none of them realize that this is, like, you know, there's no way to pronounce this specific word without having it sound like a certain other word? Did they not realize that, man? It's bad enough that Maggy's real name name sounds a little bit too close to the F slur, which is why I frequently refer to her as Maggy. But now we have this. We have the gamer word in Hazbin Hotel, kind of. I guarantee you, in Season 3, there's going to be a character that will say a word that sounds concerningly close to the R slur. It is inevitable. I know that this show is infamous for its excessive swearing, but like, Jesus, I didn't think it would go that far. Oh yeah, speaking of Maggy's real name and how she got it, there's this recurring thing in Season 2 where Maggy tries to change her name, because back when she was an angel in heaven, Adam assigned her with this name because of the woman's equivalent to the PP. So in addition to it unintentionally sounding like the F slur, it's also a very funny and hilarious and mature joke. Y'all would be calling this unfunny and cringe if it was in Family Guy, but it's from Hazbin Hotel, so it's funny. Doesn't make any goddamn sense to me at all. But getting back on topic, the first time that I watched this scene, I just had to keep going back to this one specific line because I couldn't stop laughing at it. This was the first and only time I ever laughed watching Hazbin Hotel. There was now one funny moment in Hazbin Hotel. One funny moment, and it's not even supposed to be funny. It's funny because of how unfortunate it is. I have no idea why they decided to go with this word. I don't know if anyone that worked on this show knew that it sounded a little too close to a certain other infamous word, but alas, they left it in the show, and so as a result of that, we now have the only funny moment in Hazbin Hotel, and again, it's not even intended to be funny. Now, there are a few redeeming qualities in Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel, more so than in Season 1. Much like Season 1, Season 2 is a musical. Season 2 has songs in it, and again, for the third time following Season 1 of Hazbin Hotel and Season 2 of Helluva Boss, the songs are just whatever. They exist. I don't care. They're some of the songs ever. I mentioned Lute's song in Storyteller as being actually a pretty decent song, and you know, it is a decent song. Would I ever listen to it again? No. If this song wasn't from Hazbin Hotel, if this was like some early 2000s nu metal song, I'd probably listen to it more in my spare time. I think the association with Hazbin Hotel just ruins the song for me, you know? I can't let gang know I kind of with this song, honestly. That's like the only song from the season that I remember. Again, none of the songs are like badly sung. They're not badly composed. The instrumentals are nice. I noticed in some of the songs the excessive swearing is there and it completely ruins the song. I don't know if I want to go and say like, oh, the songs are badly written because of that, given the fact that there are songs that don't have any swear words in them. Like near the end of episode 7. Episode 7 was an episode that surprisingly didn't have that much swearing in it compared to the other episodes, and then it all gets completely ruined with the song at the end of the episode. There's a song at the end of the episode, and that's when the pointless swearing comes back in full force. All of a sudden, you have characters singing the F word, the B word, whatever, the SH word, and it ruins it. There's a subplot in the latter half of the season revolving around the other two V's, Valentino and Velvet, and I'm gonna go into more detail about this later on, but like, they have a verse in the song. They have verses in the song, and that's when the excessive swearing starts to kick in. And it's like, God damn it, man. We came so close to having an episode that was surprisingly light on the swearing. We came so close to having 2 episodes that were light on the swearing. And now it seems like, nope, we only have 1 and that's it. it absolutely pissed me off, I'm not gonna lie. I'd say, yeah, this fits under bad writing. I'd say the songs are badly written, because now I've actually kind of paid attention to the song lyrics, and yeah, there's a lot of songs in the show, in season 2. There are songs in season 2 that just have pointless swearing in them. Not all of them, of course, but most of them, and it's never funny at all, and again, it just comes off as a lazy way to convey that the show is for adults and that's it. But besides that though, the songs are not badly composed, they're not badly sung or anything like that. It's once again the excessive swearing in some of the songs that just drag everything down. And it's a shame if you ask me. Oh yeah, I have to bring this up as well. There's a scene in one of the episodes where Angel sings a song and he's like dressed up as a woman, and I've gotta be honest, chat, this made me question my sexuality. I don't know, I just felt like sharing that. Why not? I've gone on before about my problems with the art style in both Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss, but I can also acknowledge that generally it is a mostly good art style. There's undeniably problems in it, but there's also very noticeable talent within the artists and animators behind both of these shows. Given the fact that the season has a big focus on Vox, one of the only characters on the show that doesn't have the color scheme of red, white, and black, there's also a lot of blue to be found in season 2. And I'm not gonna lie, it feels like a breath of fresh air to see all of this blue. All of this blue. I understand maybe this is hypocritical, you know. I can't be like, oh, too much red is bad, but too much blue is good. I shouldn't be like that. And yet, it feels so refreshing to see a color in this show that's not red, white, or black. It feels so refreshing, like you have no idea. I look at Vox as having one of the better character designs in Hazbin Hotel. Even if he does retain the other flaws that a lot of the other character designs suffer from, like the eating grin or the unnecessarily cluttered design, I look at him as being one of the best character designs on the show simply because he's blue. Yeah, he has red and black in his color scheme like a lot of the other characters, but at least he's blue. At least he's a different color. If I bundled every single Hazbin Hotel character together, Vox would be the only one that would stand out, simply because he's the only one that doesn't have red, white, and black as his color scheme, not counting the Heaven characters, of course. Again, he retains the other flaws that the character designs suffer from, but at least he's not red, white, and black. At least he's blue. Thank you for that. This season has a much greater focus on Heaven than in season 1, and so that means we get to see more of Heaven in season 2. And again, it feels refreshing to see characters that aren't just red, white, and black. It feels refreshing to see locations that aren't just red, red, red. I don't understand why the character designs in Heaven are allowed to have varied color schemes. Like Emily is kind of bluish, Abel is kind of yellowish, Lute is like black and white. You know, they're allowed to have variety in the color scheme. And then every Hell character except for Vox is red, white, and black, and that's it. I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense at all. And I've got to admit, there are rare moments in season 2 where I think the excessive redness, the excessive blueness actually kind of looks good. There are several moments in season 2 where you have this contrast between red and blue, and I think it actually looks good. I think, you know, I like the way that it looks. I love the way that it looks, actually. There are moments in season 2 where I think the art looks absolutely gorgeous, honestly. There is undeniably talent within the artists and animators of Hazbin Hotel, and so it just makes me wish that, like, all of the problems that I have with the art for this show weren't there. Because ultimately, I look at this show as having a good but very heavily flawed art style. As I mentioned before, there is exactly one moment in season 2 that made me laugh. There is exactly one funny moment in Hazbin Hotel now, and again, it's not even supposed to be a funny moment, and it ends up being funny because of how unfortunate it is. There is now exactly one funny moment in Helluva Boss and one funny moment in Hazbin Hotel. In total, I have laughed a total of 2 times throughout watching all of Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss so far. Only 2 times, and that's it. Holy crap, man. Admittedly, I do think the backstories that are established for Sir Pentious, Alistair, and Vox are fairly interesting. I think the show does a decent job at showing off their backstories, explaining like how they were when they were alive. I don't have anything to criticize about the way the show conveys these characters' backstories, besides the little thing of like, why is Sir Pentious a snake when he dies, when his life had nothing to do with snakes at all? But I feel like of the many criticisms that I've given to Hazbin Hotel, this one is more on the nitpicky side of things. There are moments in season 2 where I'm actually kind of invested in what's going on. I actually kind of care about the story that the show is trying to tell me. Unfortunately though, there are still several problems. For one thing, the show still feels bloated and cluttered. I really hope they get rid of this 8-episode format. It's okay to have more than 8 episodes. I understand maybe that's not how it works. Maybe it's like a contractual thing, like they have a contract or whatever. They can't just freely have it be 20 episodes and that's it. There's like a contract or some shit that it requires it to be 8 episodes maybe, I don't know. But the extremely small amount of episodes that these seasons have prevent these ideas from being further fleshed out, and so instead everything just feels very cramped and bloated. It feels like it's trying to go over too many things at once, and it never feels like, it feels like everything is half-baked. It never properly explores a lot of these things. And in part because of that, there are several things that are established in season 2 that are promptly ignored for the rest of the season. Lute wanting to get revenge on the angels for murdering Adam, Abel being Adam's son and following in Adam's footsteps, you know, the angel dust murdering his father when he was alive. This is stuff that's all acknowledged and established early on into season 2, and then it is promptly ignored for the remainder of the season. And I can't get over how awful the plot twist of Sir Pentious, for whatever reason, not being able to go through these portals is. I cannot get over how awful this plot hole is. I'm sorry. I don't have a problem with Sir Pentious not being able to go through these portals while the other angels can do it with no problem. The thing is though, again, they never explain why. They don't give any reason as to why Sir Pentious can't go through these portals. He's different. That's the reason. That's the excuse. This doesn't happen. That's the reason why. While I was rewatching Storyteller, I got to this scene and it's like, I noticed like the tone in Emily's voice implies that like this isn't the actual reason. I don't know how I could be able to describe this. I hope this makes sense, but like the kind of vibe that I got from the tone in her voice during this scene was like she's lying to Sir Pentious about why he can't go back to hell to see Charlie and the others. And so she comes up with this excuse of like, oh, Sir Pentious is special and unique and the first of his kind. This doesn't happen, whatever. And then at no point is the real reason ever given. At no point is the real explanation ever given. And then by the end of season 2, Sir Pentious successfully transmits a broadcast from heaven to hell, showing that like, yeah, he's in heaven, redemption is possible, convincing everyone in hell that the Hazbin Hotel is not a scam, thereby rendering the whole thing of Sir Pentious going through these portals in order to see his friends ends, it becomes pointless, you know? It becomes obsolete by the end of season 2. And so I'm just confused as to why they couldn't give a proper reason for why he can't just go through these portals. I swear to y'all, they don't explain it. I'm not lying. I'm not joking. They give no explanation at all. The excessive swearing is not funny. It has never been funny, and it will never be funny. I'm sorry. I don't understand it, man. No one is going to mistake this for a Nickelodeon Disney cartoon. Why do you feel the need to shoehorn in swearing, constant F-bombs, whatever? Why do you feel the need to do that, honestly? There are already several things in the show that conveys that no, this is not for kids, this is for adults. The show takes place in hell. You have this whole thing where it's like the demons, the angels in heaven, they perform these exterminations, these mass murders on the demons in hell. You have the whole thing of angel dust getting abused by Valentino. Nobody is going to mistake this for a Cartoon Network show. There are already tons of different ways you can convey that this show is for adults and not for kids, and yet you choose to go the very easy route, the lazy route. It's not 1995 anymore. No one is gonna get offended at a cartoon character saying the F word. Even with the interesting ideas that are in season 2, even with the rare moments where I was actually kind of invested in what was going on, most of the time I found season 2 to be boring. I found it to be kind of a slog to get through. I will acknowledge that it is better. I will acknowledge that there is an improvement from season 1, but it's not enough for me to call this a good show or anything like that. This is still very far from being a good show. I want to take some time to specifically focus on the final episode of season 2, Curtain Call. Now, as I mentioned before, this episode is significantly longer than the other episodes, being almost 40 minutes long. In this episode, the Hazbin Hotel gang team up to stop Vox's evil plan once and for all. They end up splitting up, and so we focus on 3 different storylines happening all at once. Number 1, we have Husk and Cherry Bomb trying to rescue Angel Dust from Valentino. I forgot to mention this until now, but I believe like an episode or 2 before this, they successfully brainwash Angel Dust into being like, oh, the Hazbin Hotel is a scam, Charlie Morningstar is a fraud, that sort of thing. And then later on, it's revealed that like Angel Dust was sent into the Hazbin Hotel as a spy. I have no f***ing idea, because clearly there wasn't already enough going on in the storyline for this show. And so you have Husk and Cherry Bomb trying to stop Valentino, trying to fight against Valentino while rescuing Angel Dust and snapping him out of this brainwashed state. Number 2, you have Baxter and Nifty, in which for the first time in the entire season, Baxter actually becomes an important character with a purpose. As mentioned before, he tries to hack into the computer system at VoxTech in order to transmit this live broadcast of Serpentius from heaven, proving to the demons that redemption is possible, proving to them that Serpentius is in heaven, etc. And then Velvet tries to stop Baxter from completing the transmission, and so then a fight scene between Nifty and Velvet begins, where you have Nifty fighting Velvet while making sure that Baxter successfully transmits the broadcast. And then finally, number 3, you have Charlie, Vox, and Alistair. Now, as previously mentioned earlier in this video, Alistair becomes a prisoner to Vox. He becomes a prisoner to Vox under the condition that Vox leaves Charlie alone, and that if Vox ever touched or hurt Charlie at any point, Alistair would be set free. Vox unknowingly touches Charlie on her shoulder, and that allows for Alistair to become free. And then what follows is this massive battle between Alistair and Vox. And so you have these 3 fight scenes that are all going on at once, and I have to admit, they are all pretty good fight scenes for what they are. I already went through the Alistair versus Vox fight scene, but the other 2 fight scenes, I found them to be fairly good. I found them to be pretty decent, actually. I was actually kind of invested in what was going on. I actually kind of cared in what was going on in Hazbin Hotel. The fight scenes I thought were surprisingly good. I thought they were enjoyable. Again, the thing that drags them down severely is the excessive swearing that's pointlessly shoehorned in. But looking past that, I found the fight scenes to be really good. I found them to be really damn good. Much better than I would have ever expected from Hazbin Hotel. It almost made me think the episode could be decent. Maybe this could be the only other decent episode of Hazbin Hotel Season 2, or just Hazbin Hotel in general, besides Storyteller. If Storyteller is the Ozymandias of Hazbin Hotel, then Curtain Call is the Felina of Hazbin Hotel. That's what I thought for the most part when watching this episode. And then I got to the ending scene, and the ending scene is the biggest dog shit I have ever seen in my entire life. Oh my god, bro. Everything goes completely downhill at the end of the episode. Now, as I mentioned before, there is this like cannon that'll shoot this massive laser up into heaven, which Vox intends to use in order to start a war against heaven, and then eventually take over heaven in addition to hell. And I guess it accidentally gets activated early on, and so the cannon starts going all around the city, destroying buildings and murdering several different demons, inhabitants of hell. And so there's this whole thing where like the angels and the demons, they try to save the other demons, bringing them to safety, making sure they don't get hit by the beam or anything like that. And then I guess the cannon starts to overheat, it starts to overpower, and it's gonna blow up, it's gonna explode. And so everyone is like, uh-oh, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get out of this one? And so when you take into consideration the surprisingly really good fight scenes that have been featured all throughout this one episode, you would expect the climax of the episode, the climax of season 2, to be just as surprisingly good, and then it ends up being the lamest, most anticlimactic shit I've ever seen in my entire life. Holy crap, man. They end up stopping the cannon thanks to the power of friendship. Charlie and Maggy, they go up to the cannon and they put their hands up in front of it, and then they encourage more of the demons to do the same thing, and they end up doing it. All of the angels end up doing it, and it creates this like it tames the machine, it tames the cannon, it makes it calm down, cool down, whatever. I think there's like a song that's being sung during this moment, and it's like, when I was watching this, I was thinking, what the f is this, bro? What the hell is going on? Mate, this episode was surprisingly not that bad, and then they decide to ruin it with this garbage ending. Man, get this Disney My Little Pony crap ending out of here, you know? Give me something that feels more rewarding, more satisfying, because this is just really lame and really underwhelming and really anticlimactic. I was surprisingly invested in what was going on in this episode, and then all of that investment, all of that interest went away because of this ending. And then it gets even worse, if you can believe it, because eventually Valentino and Velvet decide to join in on this power of friendship crap. And here's when I can go over something that season 2 decides to do, and there's a part of me that wants to be okay with them doing it, but there's one big reason why I'm against them doing it. Now, as I mentioned before, Vox is the main villain of season 2. However, when the season starts off, it's treated like all three of them are equally the villains for season 2. Vox, Velvet, Valentino, the 3 Vs, they're all equally evil. They're all equally villains. And then as the season progresses forward, it becomes more obvious that Vox is the big bad of season 2. Vox is the bigger evil when compared to Valentino and Velvet. And so in the latter half of season 2, Valentino and Velvet begin to notice that it feels like Vox is using them. It doesn't feel cooperative. It feels like they're just being used by Vox. Vox is using them to get what he wants. And so this whole thing of them joining in on this power of friendship crap, it's like, I guess it's supposed to imply that, like, oh, they're good guys now, or they're being redeemed. I don't know. They end up turning against Vox, and so they join in on this thing, much to Vox's dismay. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is a common trope that a lot of movies and cartoons and whatever have. The main villain has henchmen, and for the most part, the henchmen work for the main villain. And then near the end, the henchmen decide, nah, we don't want to be evil anymore. We want to be with the good guys now. And so they end up betraying the main villain. And they join the good side. They become part of the good guys. It's like, yeah, this is a common trope that a lot of movies and cartoons have. It's not a bad trope or anything like that. And it wouldn't be a bad thing for this show to have this trope in it with the 3 Vs. This whole thing of Velvet and Valentino not wanting to be evil anymore, not wanting to work for Vox anymore. This wouldn't be a bad idea if it weren't for the fact that, Valentino is a abuser. The season makes it out to be like, oh, Vox is the significantly more evil one of the 3. Vox is like the evil, irredeemable one. And it's like, okay, but Valentino isn't really all that better. Valentino is just as evil and irredeemable as Vox. Neither one of these characters are ever gonna see the pearly gates, nor should they ever see the pearly gates. Velvet is the only one of the 3 Vs that comes close to being redeemed. I spend a lot of time thinking about the show that this should have been instead. The many great ideas that are in this show that are either poorly executed or completely underutilized, never acknowledged at all. And there is one specific idea that hasn't been explored yet in Hazbin Hotel. One idea that I really hope at some point they include in the show. I really hope at some point Vivzy Pop decides, yeah, this is a good idea. I should include this into Hazbin Hotel. I don't even care if they include it and it ends up being badly executed. At least it would be there. I'm more concerned about the very real possibility that this is an idea, this is a concept that's just never explored in the entire show. Even though it would not only make the show more interesting, but it would also fix a lot of potential plot holes and problems, a lot of unfortunate implications that could come from the show's general premise of redeeming demons from hell, people that are in hell, and trying to get them up into heaven. The idea of not everyone can be redeemed. Not everyone can be saved. Not everyone can go up to heaven. Some people end up in hell and not heaven for a very good reason. This is an idea, a concept that is never explored once throughout this show. It wasn't explored in the 2019 pilot, and it wasn't explored in season 1 or season 2. And I can only hope that in like season 3, season 4, any like later season, however many seasons this thing gets, I just hope at some point they come up with it, not only because it would make the storyline more interesting, but also because it would fix some of the potentially unfortunate implications that this show could have. I've seen people interpret this whole thing of Valentino and Velvet joining the good guys to stop this canon. I've seen people interpret it as being they're only doing this out of desperation because they don't want the thing to blow up, they don't want to die because of this thing, and so that's why they join in. After this, they go back to being evil. And it's like, okay, maybe that is what they're going for, but it's not properly conveyed. There is nothing that hints that this is the reason why they joined in. When you take into consideration the whole thing of like, they don't want to work with Vox anymore, that could very easily be interpreted as being like, they don't want to be evil anymore. It's not impossible, the idea that like, they don't want to work with Vox anymore, but they still want to be evil. But that's not conveyed or implied or anything like that throughout season 2. Them turning against Vox, combined with them joining this power of friendship thing, it gives off the feeling of like, they want to be good guys now. They want to be on the good side, which again, wouldn't be a problem if Valentino wasn't a abuser. I have to remind you all that this is a show that takes place in hell. Hell is not just a place where bad people go. Hell is supposed to be a place where the absolute worst of the worst, the absolute scum of humanity go to. I'm talking Nazis. I'm talking pedophiles. I'm talking like that sort of thing. Horrible, awful people that should not ever go to heaven at all. And the most baffling thing is, there is a way they could be able to implement this concept of, oh, not everyone can be redeemed. Some people end up in hell and not heaven for a reason. They don't have to create an original character to convey that. They have two perfect characters that convey that. Vox and Valentino. These characters can never be redeemed no matter what. These characters are in hell and not heaven for a reason. These two characters serve as perfect proof that no, not everyone can be redeemed. And yet I wouldn't be surprised if in all of the future seasons they'll try to redeem these two characters, or at least just Valentino, which again, you know, that's gonna ruin a lot of Valentino as a character. As if the ending wasn't already underwhelming enough, Vox doesn't die or anything like that. He never once dies. He doesn't like, there's several moments in the episode where it feels like, okay, Alistair is going to murder Vox. Alistair is going to stop Vox. Or maybe it's like the cannon explodes or whatever, but it only affects Vox. It affects none of the other characters. No, he ends up surviving. After the power of friendship crap, it's like Vox just has his TV head and that's it. His body is nowhere to be found, and so like Valentino picks up his head, and then like he and Velvet, they just walk off back into Vox Tech, and that's it. And then I guess there's this whole thing where like Angel Dust leaves the other Hazbin Hotel characters and he goes with Valentino because he feels sad about this whole thing that like, oh, it turns out he was a spy that was sent there, and then who gives a shit about this, honestly. This just feels like extra crap to shoehorn into the already bloated storyline of Hazbin Hotel. And I feel like the decision to not have Vox die at the end of season 2 might ruin his character, because then it's like, what are they gonna do with him in season 3? Are they, honest to God, gonna try and redeem him? Are they gonna really try and do that? No. Don't do that. Don't redeem this character. Vox as a character works because he's irredeemable, because he's this awful, irredeemable character who can never be redeemed no matter what. If you attempt to redeem Vox, then his character no longer works. You ruin what made him work, especially if they end up succeeding in redeeming him. Looking at this from the Angel's perspective, Do you honestly think they would allow this character to enter heaven? This character who tried to start a war against heaven and hell during a time when it seems like there might actually be peace between the two for the first time? No, they wouldn't. Realistically, they wouldn't. Given the fact that this is a Vivzy Pop cartoon, I wouldn't be surprised if they decide, nah, he's redeemable, you know, he can go up into heaven. If he ends up going up into heaven, all of the angels are going to be cool and chill about him being in heaven. And again, we learn about his backstory. We learn about Vox's backstory in season 2. And so you would expect the whole cliche thing of like, oh, he used to be like a nice, great guy, and then like something tragic happened to him. He has a tragic backstory that explains why he became evil. And it's like, no, that's not the case at all. He wanted attention. He wanted power. He wanted control all to himself. He murdered different news reporters and talk show hosts and whatever just so that he could have all of the attention to himself. He was an evil, irredeemable son of a bitch when he was alive, and he's an evil, irredeemable son of a bitch when he's dead. That's why he works as a character. Don't try to redeem this character, because then that ruins what makes him good. And even if they didn't keep this character alive at the end of season 2 because they plan on redeeming him, even if it's like, no, he survived season 2, but he's not going to be redeemed in season 3 or in any of the future seasons, even if that's the case, then it's like, what's the point of keeping him alive then? Why keep him alive? What else is there to do with this character? You have done everything with this character, and I mean everything. You went over his backstory. You went over what he was like when he was alive. You went over the reason why he's in hell and not heaven. You went over his relationship with Alistair, going over why the two of them hate each other. You had him as the big evil villain for season 2. What else is there to do with this character? By the end of season 2, everything about his character is explained. Everyone in hell hates him, including his two co-workers, Valentino and Velvet. What else is there to do with this character in season 3, besides trying to redeem him, which again would make no sense at all and would defeat the purpose of having him be the big evil villain for season 2, and also open up a whole lot of plot holes for the storyline. They should have let Vox die at the end of season 2. There is nothing new to do with this character now. Conclude his arc. There's nothing else you can do with this character. What new fresh thing could there be to explore with this character going into season 3? Let this character die. Conclude his arc. The power of friendship crap already made the ending of season 2 very underwhelming and anticlimactic, but the fact that Vox doesn't even die, the fact that the main villain of season 2 doesn't even die, just makes it even more underwhelming and anticlimactic. Why does Adam die in the season 1 finale, but Vox is still alive in the season 2 finale, even though it should be the other way around? Again, I found Adam to be a painfully unfunny character, so I'm not complaining about the fact that he won't be present all that much in subsequent seasons, but he gave off that big evil villain feel. He was like the antagonist of the show. It's like how Batman has tons of different villains and antagonists and whatever, and then like the Joker is the antagonist, the villain for Batman. Adam could have been like that for Hazbin Hotel, and he just dies at the end of season 1. Very underwhelming and very anticlimactic. I genuinely don't know what else there is to do with this character going into season 3. There's literally nothing to do with this character. The only possible reason I could think of as to why they didn't kill him off at the end of season 2, the only reason why he's still alive at the end of season 2 is because they want to try and redeem him, which again would make zero sense at all. There would be so many plot holes within the show's storyline that would come out of them trying to redeem Vox. It's not even funny. And then it's the same thing with with Valentino, I mean, okay, the circumstances are a bit different for Valentino. The way he's executed as a villain is a lot more polarizing and controversial when compared to Vox. I understand that, but this is still another character that can never be redeemed no matter what. Velvet is, again, the only one of the three Vs that I think has any chances of ever being redeemed. And then one could argue not even she can be redeemed either. Valentino and Velvet might never be redeemed at all because of the fact that they are still complicit in Vox trying to start a war against heaven. Even with the knowledge that they turn against Vox in the second half of the season, it's like they were still complicit in Vox trying to start a war against the angels in heaven. And so that alone would prevent them from ever being redeemed at all. And I'm just only focusing on the established characters, the main characters, whatever. As I've mentioned before, hell is a place where the worst of the worst of humanity go to. And it's not like, oh, by some miracle, by some magical coincidence in the universe of Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss, the portrayal of Earth that's featured in both of these shows, there were never any Nazis or anything like that. None of them could go to heaven or hell because they never existed. Isn't that very convenient writing? It's not like that at all, because there is a brief scene in one episode of season 2 where Charlie mentions the German man with the funny mustache, implying he existed at one point. And then that also implies that he is most likely in hell, where he belongs, alongside everyone that worked for him and every deceased supporter that he has ever had. They're all in hell where they belong. Near the end of the episode where Vox and Velvet visit the Hazbin Hotel, Vox asks Charlie, "Do you think I could be redeemed?" And Charlie is like, "I think anyone could be redeemed." And then a few episodes later, it's implied the German man with the funny mustache exists in the Helliverse, and he is most likely in hell. Yeah, I don't think Vivian Medrano really thought this one through. And the good news is, all of these potential plot holes could be very easily fixed if you just establish not every character can be redeemed. And again, they don't have to go the extreme route. They don't have to create a German man with the funny mustache supporter to establish not everyone can be redeemed. You have two characters that perfectly showcase this. I still find it incredibly lame and concerning, the fact that Vox doesn't die at the end of season 2, because it's like, are you really gonna try and redeem this character? No, don't. This character cannot be redeemable. That's why he works. That's why he's a good character. And then if they end up not redeeming him in season 3, then it's like, you know, what is he gonna do? What will be his role? What will be his purpose in season 3? I feel like you've done everything for this character. Let him die. He should have died at the end of season 2. It would have been a perfect conclusion to his character arc. What more do you want to do with this character? What more do you want to say about this character? Besides trying to redeem him, which again doesn't work at all for this specific character. You don't have to create a new character to showcase not everyone can be redeemed. Some characters are far beyond redemption, that sort of thing. You have two perfect characters that showcase that. Valentino is an abuser. Valentino abuses angel dust. Valentino is a character that cannot be redeemed. Valentino is a character that can never be redeemed no matter what. This character works significantly better as soon as you establish, no, he can never be redeemed. This character is in hell and not heaven for a reason. This character will never go to heaven. I genuinely really hope they include this idea, this plotline idea, in season 3 or in any future future season. I don't even care if it's badly executed, like a lot of the other ideas in Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss. I don't even care. I'm not concerned about the very real possibility that they badly execute this idea for season 3 or any future season. No, instead, I am more concerned about the equally very real possibility that they just don't explore this concept. The series finale of Hazbin Hotel comes out and it's like, there we go, everyone is redeemed now, everyone is a good guy now, everyone that was a bad guy is now a good guy, everyone that was in hell is now in heaven, every single one of them. Valentino, Velvet, and Vox are all in heaven now, they're all angels, they are all under God. When you take into consideration the fact that this is a Vivian Medrano cartoon, when you take into consideration the fact that there are certain characters in her shows, like Valentino or Stolas from Helluva Boss, where it's like, these characters are very clearly villainous, and yet for some reason they're not portrayed as being evil, they're not portrayed as villains, even though they're very clearly supposed to be villains. They are very clearly villain coded, and honestly, they would work significantly better if they were villains. A lot of the problems that people have with Stolas as a character, people wouldn't have those problems if they portrayed him as a bad guy, as a villain. This whole thing of him manipulating and abusing Blitzo, it works better when you make him a villain. The whole thing of him neglecting his own daughter Octavia, it works better when you make him a villain. And yet for some reason, the show wants to portray Stolas as being a good guy, even though he is so heavily villain coded, and during his very early appearances in Helluva Boss, he has a more villainous feel to him as a character. When you take into consideration everything that I just said, then you start to understand why I'm concerned at the very real possibility that this idea, this concept, is never once explored throughout the entirety of Hazbin Hotel. Oh, but don't worry though, because the ending of season 2 can get even more insulting than it already is, if you can believe it. Now, there's this reoccurring thing that happens throughout season 2 where Charlie tries to get in contact with her mother, Lilith. She tries sending her different voice messages, but she never responds to any of them. She tries to call her, but she never picks up the phone, that sort of thing. And so at the end of the episode, and at the end of season 2 in general, Charlie sends her mother one last voice message to her, letting her know everything that happened, letting her know that like, oh, everything is good now, more demons are entering the Hazbin Hotel, the plan is working, whatever, redemption is possible, that sort of thing. And then she ends the voicemail and she puts down her phone, and then all of a sudden her phone starts ringing. Charlie picks up the phone, she's like, Mom, and then fade to black, roll credits, that's it, season 2 is done. And it was at that moment that I suddenly remembered, wait, didn't they already tease Lilith at the end of season 1? Didn't they already tease this character? Why are they teasing her again? And so I went back to the final episode of season 1. I went to the ending, and indeed, season 1 ends with this scene where Lute is on this beach talking to Lilith, making it clear that, yeah, she's gonna be an important character in season 2. And then I had just finished watching season 2, and no, this character was not important whatsoever to the storyline. Why did they tease this character at the end of season 1, making you think she's gonna be important in season 2, only for her to do absolutely nothing in season 2, and then they have the gall to tease her again for season 3. It's like, no, you can't do that. I'm sorry. Again, I know I like to clown on the bad writing that both of these shows have, but I genuinely think this might be a new low. Friendly reminder, season 1 ran from January to February 2024. Season 2 came out at the very end of October October 2025 and ran until mid-November. Season 2 came out almost 2 years after Season 1. Imagine waiting almost 2 years for Season 2 to come out, and you're waiting for this scene to be paid off. You're waiting for the payoff for this scene. You're waiting for them to further flesh out what this scene had set up, and then you watch Season 2, and they do literally nothing with this whole thing. They tease Lilith at the end of Season 1, making you think she's gonna be an important character in Season 2, and then she does literally nothing in Season 2. And then they tease her again at the end of Season 2, making you think she's gonna be an important character in Season 3. I don't understand the logic behind this, I'm sorry. In all fairness, they actually do kind of go over this whole thing with Lilith. This ending scene not only teases Lilith potentially being an important character in Season 2, but it also teases the whole thing of Lute wanting to get revenge on the demons for murdering Adam. This ending scene makes you think Lute is going to be the main antagonist of Season 2, or that she's going to at least have a very important role in it. And then, as we've gone on before numerous times beforehand, no, she does almost nothing in Season 2. It's Vox, not Lute, that's the villain for Season 2. Let's go back to Storyteller once again. This is the episode that further establishes Lute wants to get revenge on the demons for murdering Adam. Lute wants the exterminations to continue. She doesn't want the whole sinners to be redeemed stuff to become normalized. She doesn't want to see any former sinners in heaven. And everyone at this trial completely disagrees with her. Nobody is on her side. Nobody supports her beliefs. Nothing like that. And so we cut to this scene where Lilith is drinking coffee, tea, whatever, I don't care. And she picks up her phone and she sees this text message that she got from Lute telling her that the plan is cancelled, it's called off, whatever. And then that's it. She puts down her phone, and that's the only time that we see her in Season 2. Now, in all fairness, I wasn't paying attention to this scene the first time around. This was something that I noticed while I was rewatching the episode to see if they explain why Serpentius can't go through the portals with the other angels. It wasn't until I rewatched the episode that's when I noticed this scene. That's when I noticed this text message from Lute to Lilith telling her, oh, the plan's cancelled, it's off, whatever. And in my defense, this text message barely appears on screen. It appears on screen for like 2 to 3 seconds and that's it. It's a very blink and you'll miss it thing. And this is like a key crucial detail and they only leave it on screen for a very short period of time. They don't give you enough time to take in this text message. They don't zoom in to emphasize its importance. Nothing like that. They just briefly flash it on screen and that's it. And there you have it, folks. The only time Lilith appears in Season 2. They tease this character at the end of Season 1, making you think she's gonna be an important character in Season 2, and then they do absolutely nothing with her in Season 2. Well, no, it's not just that they do nothing with her in Season 2. They seemingly cancel, they seemingly scrap whatever they plan to do with Lilith and Lute for Season 2, just out of nowhere. This scene is pointless now in retrospect. It serves no purpose at all. It's called planning. Don't include this scene at the end of Season 1. Don't set this up at the end of Season 1 going into Season 2 and then do nothing with it at all for Season 2. Imagine binge watching Hazbin Hotel and it's like you get to the final episode of Season 1, you get to this scene, and this scene is very clearly setting up something big with Lute and Lilith, and then 2 episodes later, they just drop it. They just abandon it, cancel it, whatever. That's it. They're not going to go forward with it. And it's just, it makes me wonder what the was even the point of including this scene in the first place. Again, you gotta plan this stuff out. don't include this scene into season 1 if you're not going to do anything with it for season 2. This scene is pointless now in retrospect. This scene serves no purpose whatsoever. This is like watching a sequel bait post-credit scene for a movie that never got a sequel. I don't want to throw any allegations against the crew behind this show or anything like that, but I have a very strong feeling some went down behind the scenes of season 2 that we are not aware of. I just know things were not going smoothly at all during the production of season 2, but I just have no way to prove it at all. I have a theory that Lilith was originally going to be the villain for season 2. They were originally going to have her be the main antagonist. The ending scene of season 1 made it very clear that she was going to be an important character in season 2, alongside Lilith. They made it clear that, yeah, these two characters were going to be important in season 2, and that was the original plan. And then, for whatever reason, they decided to scrap it. They decided, no, let's have Vox be the villain for season 2 instead. And so, they briefly go over this whole thing of Lilith wanting to get revenge on the demons, even creating a whole f***ing song dedicated to it. And then they do nothing with it. There is an entire song in season 2 dedicated to a subplot that is never explored in season 2. Remind me again why people think this show is good, please. And so, because they decided to remove the whole Lilith is the main villain of season 2 stuff, instead of having Vox be the main villain, they had to just abruptly remove this whole thing with her and Lilith. They just abandon it. They set this up at the end of season 1, making you think this will be a big thing in season 2, and then they just do nothing with it in season 2. They just abruptly out of nowhere cancel it. They call it off. And it just makes me question why. What's the point of setting this up in the first place if you're not going to do anything with it? I don't understand how anyone can defend the fact that the show never gives a proper reason as to why Serpentius can't go down to hell with the other angels through these portals, thereby preventing the main conflict of the season from ever happening. I don't understand how anyone can defend the fact that the show establishes Lilith wants to get revenge on the demons in hell for murdering Adam. She wants to avenge Adam, even dedicating an entire song to this, only for them to do nothing with it for season 2. They establish it and then they do nothing with it. I don't understand how anyone could possibly defend the fact that they teased Lilith at the end of season 1, making you think she's going to be an important character in season 2. And then, because for whatever reason they decide to abandon the whole Lilith is the main villain of season 2 stuff, they just abruptly retcon and scrap whatever they were planning on doing with Lilith and Lilith. Whatever they set up at the end of season 1, it's no longer going forward. It ends up not happening at all in season 2, thereby making it pointless the fact that they teased this character at the end of season 1. And then they decide to tease this character again a second time at the end of season 2, making you think she's going to be important in season 3, which again, just it makes me further question, why did they tease this character at the end of season 1? Why did they tease this character at the end of season 1 if she potentially doesn't become an important character until season 3? This show is badly written. This show is filled to the brim with all kinds of plot holes. It's not just the excessive swearing and sex jokes. This show could be completely devoid of swearing and sex jokes, and I would still consider it a very poorly written show. This is a show that sets up certain things only to do nothing with them. This is a show that has so many things that it wants to say, but it does a piss poor job at going over these things. It gives you way too much information to digest all at once with its many characters, and it doesn't give you any time at all to take it all in. It doesn't give you any time at all to, slowly understand what's going on. And so, because there are way too many things that the show wants to go over, because there are like 20 million main characters in the show, because for whatever reason they don't want to raise up the episode numbers for each season, they don't want to have like 20 episodes per season, no, they still want to stick with 8 episodes and that's it. Because of all of that, the show comes off as very cramped and bloated. It feels very cluttered. When I say this show has bad writing, I'm not just talking about the excessive swearing and sex jokes. No, those are just the cherry on top. I'm talking about this right here. I can't get over it. I have never seen any other cartoon, any other TV show do this before in my life. They tease a character at the end of the first season, making you think she's going to be important in season 2, and then they do nothing with her at all in season 2. Whatever they were setting up at the end of season 1, they just abruptly cancel it. They just scrap it. They decide, no, we're not going to go forward with this actually. And so at the end of season 2, they decide to tease this character again, making you think she's going to be important in season 3. And so it's like, why did you tease this character at the end of season 1? Why did you make it seem like this character will be important in season 2 if she doesn't end up becoming an important character until season 3? That's bad writing. I'm sorry, that's awful writing actually. I have never seen any other cartoon, any other TV show in general. I've never seen anything like that before. I used to look at Storyteller as being the best episode of season 2 and maybe the best episode of the show in general. But now that I think about it, I don't think it is actually. I don't think this is the best episode. I have paid a lot more attention to this episode than I did the other 7 episodes. This and Curtain Call are the episodes that I put the most focus on while working on this video. And so it's like, the first time I watched this episode, I thought it was surprisingly decent for Hazbin Hotel standards. And then I start thinking about it a lot more, and then I rewatch the episode, and I'm like, no, I don't think this is the best episode of the show actually, now that I think about it. Yeah, the episode is light on the swearing and sex jokes because it takes place in heaven, and Gravity is a mostly decent song for Hazbin Hotel standards, but at the same time, this is the episode that establishes the whole thing of, oh, Serpentius can't go through these portals down to hell with the other angels. Why? He just can't. We're not going to give you an explanation why. He just can't. Because plot convenience. That's why. And also, this is the episode that establishes Lute wanting to get revenge on the demons for murdering Adam. A plot line that is subsequently ignored in all future episodes of the season. Now that I think about it, I'm actually extremely conflicted on how I should feel about Storyteller, because again, it's light on the excessive swearing and sex jokes, and it has what is probably the best song across the entire show, across the Helluverse in general. There's not a single song in Helluva Boss that comes close to being surprisingly good like Gravity. But then this episode also has a lot of plot holes and story ideas that are established but never further explored, and it just leaves me conflicted on like, is this the best episode of the show or not? That should give you an idea of how bad this show is, how frustrated I am at the fact that the show is this bad with its writing. I'm not criticizing this show this harshly because I want to make people angry, because I want to be like an evil troll or whatever. No, I genuinely want this to be a good show. I don't want to go into this hating it. When I first watched this show back in 2024, I went into it thinking, okay, this wasn't going to be as bad as the haters made it out to be. And then it ended up being exactly as bad as the haters made it out to be. I don't want to hate Hazbin Hotel. I want this to be a good show. I want this to be a great show, actually. I want this to be a beloved, amazing show. A show that deserves to be cherished and remembered. And instead, it is filled to the brim with so many plot holes, so many issues that it's just like, no, there's a reason why I believe this show will have no legacy, no cultural impact of any kind. I don't care about the story behind this show. The whole thing of like, oh, Vivian Medrano was this up-and-coming small-time indie cartoon creator, and she created an animated short film, and it got viral. It became big. I don't care about that at all. I don't care about the talent that's in this show, because there is undeniably talent within the show. Not from Vivian Medrano herself, that's for damn sure, but from like the voice actors are undeniably talented. The artists and animators are talented. It's like there's undeniably talent within this show, but none of that matters when the writing is garbage. I don't care about anything else when the writing is garbage. You can include as many F-bombs as you want. You can include as many hype moments as you want. None of that matters when the writing is just garbage. When there are so many problems with the writing in your show. I don't see a universe where this is a show that is still universally beloved and praised 10 years later. I don't see a universe where this is still considered a good show several years from now. This thing is going to age badly, and there's nothing that any of us can do about it unless Vivzy Pop gets her together and she starts, she hires good, competent writers, or she becomes a good writer herself. I have 3 possible explanations as to why they teased Lilith at the end of season 1, only to do nothing with her in season 2, and then tease her again at the end of season 2, making you think she's going to be important in season 3. I have 3 possible reasons for this. Number 1, the show is badly written. Number 2, there was some that went down behind the scenes for season 2 that just completely changed the storyline. The storyline originally focused on Lute wanting to get revenge on the demons for murdering Adam, and so she enlists Lilith to help her. And then, for whatever reason, they just abruptly decide, no, we're gonna scrap this plan. We're gonna have Vox be the villain for season 2 instead. And so this whole thing with Lilith doesn't become important in season 3. There they decide, yeah, finally we can explore Lilith as a character. We were gonna explore her as a character in season 2, but for whatever reason we decided not to, so we're gonna do it in season 3 instead, even though we teased her at the end of season 1. Or number 3, this is a bait and switch. They deliberately teased this character at the end of season 1, only to do nothing with her in season 2. Hear me out on this. Lilith is a very mysterious, unknown character. There's not a whole lot about her that's known. We don't know her backstory. We don't know her relationship with Charlie or Lucifer. We don't know the reason why she's isolated from them. We don't know any of that at all. And so what I think they might be trying to do is they tease her at the end of every season. They tease her at the very end of every season, making you think she's going to be important in the next season, and then she isn't. Imagine season 3 episode 1 comes out, Charlie picks up the phone, she thinks it's her mom, and then it ends up being someone else instead. It's not Lilith or anything like that. And then season 3 ends with another bait and switch tease, making you think Lilith is going to be important for season 4, and then she isn't. And then they continue doing this until the final season of Hazbin Hotel comes out. Whenever it may come out, whatever the final season ends up being, it'll be season 5, season 6, whatever, I have no way of knowing. And it's not until the final season of the show that's when they finally go over Lilith as a character. That's when they finally have her reunite with Charlie and Lucifer, go over her backstory, go over her relationship with them, go over the reason why she's separated from them, that sort of thing. I am very likely inhaling a lot of copium when it comes to this theory. There's no way they tease a character at the end of season 1, making you think she's gonna be important in season 2, only for them to do absolutely nothing with her in season 2. There's no way they can do that and not see anything wrong with that. There's no way they could think that's good writing. I have no way of knowing until season 3 comes out. I guarantee you, as soon as season 3 comes out, as soon as the first episode of season 3 comes out, as soon as I watch the first episode of season 3, I see Charlie pick up her phone. She's like, "Mom, is that you?" And it turns out it actually is her mom. It actually is Lilith. The first thing I'm gonna do is f***ing lose it. The first thing I'm gonna do is be like, why did you tease this character at the end of season 1 if she doesn't become an important character until season 3? Jesus Christ, man. And that's about it for Hazbin Hotel season 2. That's everything that I want to say about Hazbin Hotel season 2. Despite everything that I have gone over in this video, I do think that season 2 is a marginal improvement from season 1, and it's an absolute masterpiece when compared to Helluva Boss season 2. There are rare moments in season 2 where I'm actually kind of invested in what's going on. I'm actually kind of interested in the storyline that this wants to tell. With season 2, I think the show comes a little bit closer to being the great show that it very clearly wants to be, but unfortunately, it still has a very long way to go before I could consider it even okay, even passable. The biggest problem that I have with season 2, above all else, is the fact that I found it to be absolutely boring. I wasn't offended with season 2 like I was with season 1, but that's mostly because by this point, I have gotten used to the excessive swearing and sex jokes. They are still painfully unfunny, but I've gotten used to them now. At first, I wanted to make this video, and then after watching Helluva Boss season 2, I decided no, I didn't want to make this video anymore. And then I decided, fine, I'll make this video anyways. I didn't intend for this to be a super long video. I didn't intend for this to be the length that it is. The Hazbin Hotel Season 1 review was 46 minutes long. The Helluva Boss Season 1 review was 40 minutes long. The Helluva Boss Season 2 review was 2 hours and 29 minutes long. Yeah, there's a big difference right there. I didn't expect this video to be as long as the Helluva Boss Season 2 review, or maybe even the first season reviews for Helluva Boss and Hazbin Hotel. I thought this was going to be a much quicker, much shorter video going over season 2 and what happens in it. I would briefly acknowledge the excessive swearing and sex jokes and whatever not being funny. I would go over stuff that's like, oh, it's hard to take the serious moments seriously because of the swearing and sex jokes, but no, there were surprisingly a lot of different things that I wanted to go over with season 2. Season 2 absolutely surprised me with how badly written it was. And so against my will, I had to make this review another really big, really long review. But hopefully it ended up being worth it. It's honestly kind of funny now that I think about it. 1 year ago in 2014, I thought Helluva Boss was the better show, and now here I am 1 year later, and I honest to God think Hazbin Hotel might be the better show. The way I look at it, Helluva Boss has the better season 1, while Hazbin Hotel has the better season 2. This obviously doesn't mean much because again, I think both shows are terrible, but it is something to think about. As for my ranking of the show on the Search for the Worst Cartoon ranking list, season 2 2 doesn't change the ranking at all. I didn't move it down higher or lower or anything like that, like with Helluva Boss Season 2. Helluva Boss used to be one of the higher ranked cartoons on the list, and then I hated Season 2 so much that it made me drag it all the way down to rock bottom territory, and then meanwhile Hazbin Hotel is still in rock bottom territory. Even if Season 2 has a few improvements in it from Season 1, it's still not enough for me to rank it up higher on the list or anything like that. And there are enough flaws within the writing for Season 2 that keeps it down at rock bottom where it belongs. Before anyone accuses me of milking the Helluverse, making a million videos on both of these shows and why they're bad shows, going over the fact that like, oh, I said I wasn't gonna review Season 2, and now here I am reviewing Season 2. I'm milking it. I want money, whatever. Before anyone says that, I have good news. This is very likely gonna be the last Helluverse related video that I make for a very long time. I want to imagine Season 3 of Hazbin Hotel will come out sometime in 2026, definitely in the latter half of the year, and given the fact that Helluva Boss usually takes several years for its seasons to be completed, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not gonna be until 2029. That's when Season 3 of Helluva Boss gets completed. So it's gonna be a long while before you get another Helluverse video from me. Actually, now that I think about it, I hated Helluva Boss Season 2 so much that I don't even think I would review Season 3. Hazbin Hotel Season 3, maybe I might review that when that comes out. Helluva Boss Season 3, no, that has no chance of ever happening. There is a very, very, very tiny bit of good within Hazbin Hotel. I am inhaling so much copium for Hazbin Hotel in the hopes that it ends up being a good show at some point. And the somewhat better quality of Season 2 gave me a little bit more of that copium. And then meanwhile, Helluva Boss is a lost cause. Helluva Boss is just, no, I give up. Helluva Boss is dog shit. I'm sorry. This is a show that it's gonna end badly. You have a mostly mediocre, okay first season, and then every subsequent season is gonna be the worst dog shit I've ever seen in my life. I have given up on Helluva Boss. Truly, this thing is irredeemable. Hazbin Hotel, though, there is a little bit of hope. There is a little bit of it that's like, I think a big reason as to why I'm more inclined to talk about Hazbin Hotel in the future than Helluva Boss is because, unlike Helluva Boss, this show actually sticks to the premise that it established from the beginning. And so that makes me curious to see how it'll all turn out in future seasons. Whereas with Helluva Boss, it's like, I don't care about the Blitzo Stolas stuff. I want to see demon assassins. That's a way more interesting premise, and you choose to do nothing with it. I'm sorry, but I will never not get pissed off at the wasted potential that Helluva Boss has. I can only hope there exists Helluva Boss fanfictions out there that do the original premise of the show justice, but knowing my luck, there are very likely tons of Helluva Boss fanfictions that are just boring as hell bird-demon relationship. That's what should be prioritized clearly. Vivian Medrano is the only goddamn person in the entire world that would not only create a romantic relationship between a bird and a demon, but also somehow have it be really f***ing boring. I don't even know how you could do that, genuinely. That's almost impressive. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see y'all next time. Adios!